The first rays of dawn crept over the towering prison walls, spilling into the cramped jail cell that had been John's home for the past decade. He lay on the ragged cot, listening to the discordant chatter of alien languages echoing down the corridor. This had been his wake-up call for 3,650 miserable mornings. But today was different. Today was the day John finally regained his freedom. The electronic door panel beeped and slid open with a grind of metal. A uniformed guard bellowed, "Prisoner 85978, stand for release." John complied silently, his face an impassive mask that revealed nothing of the roiling emotions within. After years spent surviving the ruthless prison hierarchy, showing weakness was not an option. The guard shoved John down the dim passageway toward the intake area, past rows of cells teeming with the galaxy's worst offenders, massive Arcturian pirates, sadistic Alpha Centauri war criminals, and other violent convicts leered at John as he passed. But he kept his steely gaze fixed straight ahead, the threatening whispers barely registering. John had been the only human locked away in this notorious high-security intergalactic prison, light years from Earth. Most of the inmates here were doing hard time for everything from illegal hyperspace lane running to hijacking star freighters. Petty crimes didn't land you a bunk in this outer rim penitentiary. As he reached processing, John finally allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. The nightmare that began a decade ago when he was abducted far from home under mysterious circumstances was almost over. Once back on Earth, he could start to rebuild the life that was stolen from him. The processing officer rifled through John's file. "Says here you were serving 10 solar cycles for unauthorized celestial body occupation." He raised an eyebrow ridge at John. "Care to explain?" John kept his face carefully blank. The bogus charge was a cover-up for why a human had really been railroaded into this galactic prison system. The truth was classified to all but the highest echelons of power among the Planetary Alliance. "Just ready to put it all behind me," John replied neutrally as the officer processed his release forms. He contained his simmering bitterness at being unjustly imprisoned. Patience and discipline had been the keys to enduring 10 long years surrounded by ruthless enemies. Finally, John changed back into his old civilian clothes, the fabric strange and stiff after a decade of disuse. The officer handed John a small plastic case. "Personal effects," he grunted. It contained only a single item, a smooth metallic disc engraved with a complex geometric symbol. John slipped the disc into his pocket, keeping his face carefully blank despite the torrent of feelings the object provoked. Standing at the last checkpoint, John steeled himself before the energy barrier dropped for the first time in 10 years. The shimmering force field deactivated with a sizzling hiss, opening the way to freedom. John didn't look back as he strode out of the maximum security prison, emerging onto the barren asteroid it was built into. The prisoner transport ship was already prepped and waiting. John climbed aboard, settling into an empty seat as the engines thrummed to life. He watched through a small porthole as the asteroid prison receded, becoming just another speck floating in the void of space. John was unable to stop a smile ghosting across his lips. Soon he would reclaim his life on Earth, far from this lawless corner of the galaxy. After the warp jump, John's smile disappeared as giant gas planets loomed into view. He was back in the Sol system. The transport ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, clouds giving way to reveal the gleaming megacity below. "Welcome home," the pilot said over the comms. But as John stared out at the dizzying scale and alien architecture of the city, he realized this was not the Earth he remembered. In the decade he had been away, his home had become something unrecognizable. The time had come to see what our planet had become without him. John stepped off the transport ship onto the busy streets of the megacity, senses assaulted from all sides. Towering skyscrapers of impossible alien design loomed overhead, blocking out the sun. Speeder traffic zoomed by endlessly along multi-level air lanes crisscrossing the sky. Strange smells wafted from street food stalls while snippets of incomprehensible alien dialects echoed down the thoroughfares. This was not the city John remembered. What had once been a quiet neighborhood was now a bustling intergalactic port. The entire planet had become a central hub following Earth's admission into the Planetary Alliance while John was imprisoned. SS were a distinct minority now, many having relocated off-world for more familiar surroundings. Those who remained seemed accustomed to the extraterrestrial presence. But for John, fresh out of a decade of isolation and exile, it was overwhelming. He felt like a stranger in his own home. Consulting the directory implant all citizens now apparently had, John made his way toward the residential block that once held his apartment. He wondered if any fragment of his old life might still be found there, or if it too had been subsumed in the rising tide of interplanetary immigration. Suddenly, a group of amphibious Rigelians peered at John, then began whispering and pointing. "What a weak and pathetic creature," one said in English. "So small compared to us." The leader, a head taller than the rest, let out a derisive laugh. Typical primitive human. No wonder they locked him away so long. John's hands curled into fists, anger flaring from years pent up alone. He turned to face the aliens. "You got something to say to me?" he asked, voice low and steady. The leader ran his bulbous eyes over John dismissively. "Just commenting on your puny size next to a superior Rigelian." His companion sniggered. John stepped forward until he was face to face with the leader, staring unflinchingly into the alien's imposing obsidian gaze. "Why don't you put your money where your mouth is then?" John said. "I challenge you to a fight, right here and now." The Rigelians exchanged stunned glances, then burst out in raucous laughter. The leader flashed a grin full of jagged teeth. "I accept your challenge, human. I'll enjoy putting you in your place." A crowd quickly gathered, eager to watch the confrontation unfold between the brash human and the intimidating alien nearly twice his size. But John didn't back down, keeping his eyes locked on the Rigelian leader while adrenaline coursed through his veins. After years confined with no outlet for his simmering rage, he almost welcomed this fight. The arrogant Rigelian attacked first, attempting to tackle John and use his superior strength to quickly overwhelm the human. But John neatly sidestepped the lumbering alien, deftly using his momentum to send the Rigelian crashing face first to the pavement. Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd at John's speed and precision. The incensed alien pulled himself up, an expression of disbelief on his scaly face. He clearly underestimated John's abilities honed from years surviving the most lawless place in the galaxy. The fight was only just beginning, and John was ready to teach his overconfident opponent a lesson about the grit of humankind. The Rigelian leader picked himself off the ground, shaking his massive head in an attempt to clear it after the hard fall. Around him, the gathered crowd was abuzz with shocked chatter at seeing the imposing alien so easily felled by the smaller human. "Did you see how fast that guy moved? He just sidestepped a 7-foot Rigelian like it was nothing. This human's got skills for sure." The leader's nostrils flared in anger and outrage as he listened to the astonished commentary. Never before had anyone managed to lay a hand on him in combat, let alone knock him flat onto the ground. He snarled at John, flexing his muscular arms in an attempt to intimidate the human. "That was just luck, scrawny thing. Now you've made me angry. I'm going to crush every bone in your weak little body." But John showed no reaction to the threat, keeping his face emotionless. His eyes remained locked on the Rigelian, cold and calculating. After enduring years in an intergalactic prison surrounded by ruthless convicts, it would take far more than words to rattle him. With a guttural roar, the Rigelian charged forward, attempting to grab John in a vice-like grip. But again, John anticipated the attack, smoothly stepping aside at the last second to send the alien stumbling past. Before he could react, John delivered a precise blow to the back of the Rigelian's knee joint. With a howl of pain, the massive alien sank to the ground once more. "Had enough yet?" John asked evenly. "Or do you want me to embarrass you some more?" The taunt worked. Bleeding pride momentarily overriding pain and reason, the leader hauled himself up and came at John again. But this time, John went on the offensive, raining precise strikes on the alien's vulnerable gill slits and arm joints. The Rigelian attempted to shield himself, only for John to feint and sweep his legs out from under him. Each time the alien attempted to grapple John, he instead found only empty air, the human slipping fluidly out of reach like water through grasping fingers. Years of honing his agility and reflexes against dangerous convicts now gave John an almost preternatural ability to evade and counterattack. The flurry of blows came relentlessly, more than the alien had ever endured. John dissected his opponent with clinical precision, finding every weakness and structural flaw in Rigelian anatomy. He operated with icy focus and discipline, never letting emotion undermine his form. Finally, the battered and dazed Rigelian sank to his knees, chest heaving as he struggled for breath. Rivulets of neon blood leaked from his gills and mouth while his limbs trembled, no longer able to support his massive frame. The arrogance had completely drained from his face, leaving only disbelief and shame. The crowd fell silent, stunned by the spectacle of the formidable alien utterly dominated by the unassuming human. John stepped forward and grabbed the Rigelian leader by the ridges of his thick neck and stared pitilessly into the alien's bulbous black eyes. "Let this be a lesson to anyone who underestimates humanity," John said, his voice low and dangerous. "We're more resilient than you know." John released his grip on the defeated Rigelian, staring down impassively as the alien leader scrambled away on hands and knees. The gathered crowd parted quickly, not wanting to impede his humiliated retreat. Turning slowly, John surveyed the circle of onlookers now eyeing him warily. The thrill of victory coursed through his veins, making him feel truly alive for the first time in years. Adrenaline still pounded through his system, muscles tensed and ready for another fight. After a decade deprived of any control or agency, John had proven he was still a force to be reckoned with. Word of his skill and ruthless efficiency spread rapidly through the city's extraterrestrial communities overnight. Many wondered where a mere human could have honed such formidable combat abilities. John kept a low profile over the next few days, trying to gather information on recent developments as he struggled to orient himself in this unfamiliar version of Earth. It seemed incredible how much could change in just 10 years. An entire shadow culture now existed, comprised of traders, smugglers, and mercenaries from across the galaxy. Venturing to a seedy alien bar on the outskirts of town, John hoped to learn more about this intergalactic underworld taking root on his homeworld. The establishment catered to a rough clientele from all corners of the galaxy, keen to take advantage of Earth's new position as a trading hub. In the dimly lit bar, John noticed a rowdy table of massive Tellurians, their elephantine forms dominating the room. And at the counter sat an alluring Arcturian female, her sapphire skin and tentacled hair standing out vividly amidst the grime. John ordered a drink but kept a wary eye on the boisterous Tellurians. Suddenly, the entrance burst open and a group of hulking aliens strode in. At their center was the leader of the Rigelians whom John had fought and humiliated days before. The alien's eyes blazed with cold vengeance when he spotted John sitting at the bar. It had been a setup. "That's him! The human!" the Rigelians shouted. "He's mine!" On his word, the Tellurians opened fire with menacing alien weapons, sending patrons screaming and scrambling for cover. In the chaos, John grabbed the Arcturian woman and dove behind the bar. Adrenaline flooded his system as his combat instincts kicked in. "Stay down until it's over," John told her. Then he took a deep breath and leapt into action. Moving with practiced efficiency between energy blasts, John disabled the nearest Tellurian and seized his weapon. With icy focus, he began to systematically take down the hulking aliens one by one. Years in prison had forced John to adapt, evolving his abilities to almost superhuman levels. He was a blur of strikes and shots, never wasting movement or letting emotion undermine his concentration. The Tellurians soon lay battered and unconscious around the bar. But the Rigelian leader had slipped away in the confusion. John knew this was only the beginning. Word would continue to spread, and more would come wanting to challenge the formidable human who had emerged from years off-world. John was ready. After a decade powerless, he would never again let anyone control his fate. With the Tellurian assailants neutralized, John surveyed the wreckage of the barroom brawl. The mysterious Arcturian woman slowly emerged from behind the counter, tentatively stepping over the unconscious aliens. She looked at John with newfound understanding and respect, seeing his formidable combat skills firsthand. "That was incredible," she said softly. "I've never seen anyone take down a group of Tellurians bare-handed before. You moved faster than I could even track." John gave a rare hint of a smile. "I appreciate you not panicking. Staying calm is key in situations like that." He extended his hand. "I'm John. Alina," she replied, shaking his hand delicately with her slender fingers. They talked for hours once the authorities had come and gone. John found himself opening up to Alina, sharing things he had never revealed to anyone about his decade imprisoned off-world. And for the first time since returning to this unfamiliar Earth, he didn't feel quite so alone. But John knew the Rigelian leader was still out there, bent on vengeance. And as word continued to spread about the lone human with extraordinary abilities, more would come wanting to test themselves against him. Danger and conflict seemed to follow in his wake now, after years being surrounded by lawless convicts. Over the next weeks, John stayed wary and on high alert, knowing another attack could come at any time. When a group of hulking Groxians jumped him at the public transit station, John dispatched them with ease. And later, he quickly overwhelmed a pair of Tarkalian bounty hunters when they tried to catch him off guard outside his apartment. But John grew weary of the constant threats and challenges wherever he went. He longed to find some peace and regain a sense of normalcy on this alien world Earth had become. After disabling another wave of would-be assassins, John decided it was time for a change. With Alina at his side, they booked passage on the next transport ship leaving the Sol system, ready to put Earth's chaos behind them. Maybe out there among the stars, John could find a new home where his reputation didn't precede him, a place where he didn't need to fight just to survive. As the ship prepared for warp jump into the depths of uncharted space, John watched the blue marble of Earth recede on the view screen. He had regained his freedom after years lost to exile and injustice. And while Earth may have changed, he knew the core of his humanity remained intact, tested and tempered by the decades stolen from him. Now, finally, John could chart his own course forward. Wherever that journey led, he would meet it on his own terms, relying on the inner resilience that had seen him through his darkest days.